The first time I traveled from Sweden to Spain, 19 years old, fresh out of school. I landed in Alicante because I was going to attend a short course on Spanish language and culture. At the time, I wasn't a chef. I probably liked food as much as the next person, but my real interest and passion was photography. At this time, I did not fancy these little things called olives. I couldn't stand red wine. And I pretty much hated the flavor of anchovies. But to my big surprise, after a little while in this new home to me, I started to realize that in this new setting with these new people, in the right proportions, these kind of new foods to me, in the right proportions, with the right pairings, in a setting, trying to speak a few words of Spanish, all of a sudden, it really made sense. So today, these are some of my most loved foods, actually. So I would say it's very much about context. A little bit of an open mind, of course, helps. But really, it's about context when you learn to appreciate new foods, and I really re-evaluated my preferences in that sense, right? So fast forward 25 years, I'm now working at a place called the Basque Culinary Center in San Sebastian here in Spain, a pioneering ecosystem of education, research, and promotion of gastronomy. And I mean, at the BCC, we know for sure that food and culture is intricately linked, a very, very important link. And I mean, in a broad sense, all food is culture, but it's also those little small differences between people, the place they grow up, and their food culture that really makes them unique as consumers, right? So that's why each country or each region even is so different, right? So, of course, changing habits, tastes, preferences, it's not a given. It takes time, it takes effort, but I think we can all agree on that. In the end, like, things can be molded into shape with time. And I would say that's what makes us human as well, our ability to adapt, right? Although some things might really seem hardwired into us, like the smell of a steak sizzling on a barbecue, or our preference for the sweet, the fatty, which I'm sure made a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective. So I think that by focusing on both culture and flavors, chef can really play an instrumental role in introducing new foods, making novel foods, like cultivated meat, for example, something not only accepted, but even appreciated by consumers. And I think chefs can help to mainstream that kind of demand for these new, up until now, still kind of unknown products, like on the mass market. So, of course, my adventures in Alicante, they're just a parenthesis, just a really small thing compared to other changes we've seen historically in food cultures all around the world. I mean, we can just take as an example the influence that Buddhism had on the Japanese cuisine, and how it really shaped the way we know Japanese cuisine today. Or, of course, the Middle Ages with all the incorporation of new ingredients into Italy, for example, introduction of rice, of saffron and other spices that made possible dishes like risotto alla milanese today. Of course, the Colombian exchange, let's not forget that. All the new ingredients coming over to Europe from Americas. the introduction of tomato into Europe, and something that really was an ornamental plant at first, and people were very suspicious about the tomato. Wasn't it until the really poor started eating the tomato and kind of showing the world that it's edible, that it slowly gained acceptance, and today it's one of the bases of the Italian cuisine. A little bit the same thing happened with the potato in Sweden. Arrived around 400 years ago. For the first 100 years, it was animal feed. People did not think it was edible. They thought it was poisonous. And it actually took a little bit of took some royal influence to spread the use of the potato. Our King Gustav III, he helped. There was a lot of consumption of grains at the time, but as a kind of approach to avoid this reliance on only grain, which was also used for producing alcohol. So people sometimes preferred to make alcohol than to eat. So that's why he pushed the introduction of the potato, right? And now it's a staple in any like traditional Swedish meal. The potato is going to be there. So it's a little bit these kind of curiosities in different food cultures around the world that me as a chef, I'm very keen on exploring these. So the BCC is currently building a new center called Gastronomy Open Ecosystem in San Sebastian in Spain. And this is a center that will house a research center, 3 different masters, and an entrepreneurship area as well. And this, our vision for this is that it'll become an innovation hub for where we can bring together companies and where really companies and creativity and consumers can converge in one single hub, right? So what's the big challenge? For me, the big challenge with this place is that I don't want it to be just another food tech center. So my vision, of course, as a chef, is to center the work in this place around an expert team, of culinary expert team, of chefs. So chefs with knowledge of food culture, of course, with very technical knowledge as well, but really letting the culture, the food culture, lead the way. So I think great scientists, food technologists are pretty easy to find, but it's a little bit trickier to find chefs that are creative, but also have a good knowledge about traditional food culture as well as contemporary food culture. So I think what I want to say with this is I want to use chefs as kind of catalysts to find that connection between the advances in food tech and the consumers. Kind of using chefs as some sort of cultural mediators. So one of the trends we've seen in food these last years is really interesting, actually, fermentation. So over the last 15 years, more or less, we can say, we've seen 2 different lines of trends in fermentations. On the consumer side, like a more health-conscious approach, where fermented products are interesting to consumers, and on the more chefs and restaurant side, as a tool to creatively transform flavors and aromas, no? Foods into something new. Chefs 15 years ago started to ferment everything and anything. They would go like, "Oh, a rock, can I ferment this? Let's see what happens." So what happened was there was this very cross-cultural blend on the chef side, taking fermentation techniques from one side of the world, blending them with local ingredients from a totally different terroir. And this was very interesting. I just presented the other day in Japan an acorn miso that we've made with acorns from Spain, but with the traditional Japanese fermentation technique. And of course, for a chef, that's not really anything big. It's just like, yeah, a little bit, you just need to be a little bit creative and you put the two things together, right? But for a Japanese that have been trying eating miso made from soybeans his whole life, maybe it's a quite disruptive innovation. So I think the same can be applied to a lot of different ingredients. We've been talking a lot about novel proteins, right? Or even insects. Insects have this kind of acceptability problem. In many parts of the world today, insects are eaten daily, and it's nothing strange. But in Europe, we do have the acceptability problem. So I think chefs can help that as well. And we know when to kind of back off and when our food culture says, this is maybe not the right approach to introduce this kind of food, right? So I think chefs are good for creating curiosity around new foods, around new ways to eat. And I think it can have kind of a trickle-down effect from high-end cuisine to mid-range cuisine, and then all of a sudden the consumers start talking about it. There's a little bit of interest. It's kind of to get the ball rolling, a little bit of that, right? So I think that's what we chefs can do, and I think also the dynamic nature of food cultures, as we've seen, they can of course adapt. They're very rooted in history, always. Like food cultures are very rooted, but they also evolve. So that's a little bit what we call tradition in motion. So bringing these two things together, right? So I would say, I'm asking myself, how can we as chefs have an impact? And I don't think there's any silver bullet to be able to change consumer habits or for the novel food acceptance in general for the mass market. But I do believe that as chefs we can be key actors in this kind of transition and introduction of new foods as well. And I think we can help connect what is the ag, food, tech sector and the production of food with the consumers in a way that makes sense for us, for our tastes. So I would say kind of help guiding new foods towards the consumers through familiar flavors, right? Through the food culture. So let me just finish off with a little bit of a reflection that I did yesterday when we were talking about the very interesting talks yesterday. So it was about like, can chefs be part of scalable solution towards a more healthy and more sustainable food system? And I do believe we can. Yes, I do. But it's possible if we change our role a little bit. So instead of feeding people, I think we need to teach people how to eat. Thank you very much.
Very much. A question right away over there.
Yeah, thanks. As I was listening to the panel, thank you very much. You have a lot of power there. So I have a question or a challenge for the three of you together. Between dairy and plant-based, or meat and plant-based, there is something in the middle, right? The industry talks of sometimes we do diesel cars or we do full electric, but in the middle there is hybrids. The industry is working very little on that for the time being, but it has the power to have the best of nutrition, of animal protein, and the best of plant-based. Currently, plant-based is poor on nutrition, poor on taste, poor on many dimensions. So why would the consumers not be interested in this? Why would the startups not work more on this? And how can the chefs make it attractive?
Okay. I'll take the first part of the consumers. Why would they not be interested in this? They are interested. In fact, this year we did research comparing 5 types of hamburgers. 3 of them were plant-based, different brands. 1 of them was hybrid, so half meat and half plant-based. And the last one was conventional meat. And the preferred one of this neuroscientific test, so it was not a conventional consumer study, was that they preferred the hybrid one. So the flavor profile is fantastic, and that's what the brain of consumers say when they taste it. So I share your view. It's a great opportunity also for the food industry in terms of reducing cost of those hamburgers, for example. And we have proved consumer acceptance. So it is going to be difficult to communicate and to share with the public this new type of product, as with all novel foods in the market. But I see a huge opportunity there.
I'm actually hearing a lot about hybrid products lately. A lot of interest from companies coming to us asking for how can we make a really great hybrid product? Because I think it's very natural that the first step you take is go to the extreme. Let's try like all-in plant-based. And then you notice there's not really the need for it, or the need, yeah, that the market is not really demanding it right now. And it's a little bit, it's not as nutritious in a lot of the cases. So I think it's a very natural step that you take one step back. You tried all in. I take one step back, and I'll do something that will work in the meantime while we get there.
Agree. What can AI do here?
Me?
Oh.
AI. Yeah.
AI. So AI, at the end of the day, what can add is understanding and predicting if this is something that consumers are really looking into, and it's something that they want to try or they want to incorporate in their day-to-day. At the end of the day, what we can do is analyze and predict trends. So if we see that there's a demand for these hybrid products, that will be the advice that we give. Like, okay, so we need to try more to come up with hybrid.
I look forward to your answer tomorrow.
More than that, I think it can contribute in terms of recipe creation. So Notco has created plant-based milk that tastes like milk thanks to AI. So I believe AI can also contribute in the flavor profile.
Yeah, that's very smart.
Yes. Go ahead.
I do want to comment. When Beyond Meat came out, it was seen as some sort of a mega trend, the movement towards plant-based approach. Taste-wise, it wasn't that good. So if you were to subsequently try out Impossible Foods, I think the burger would be more real. It's got a little bit of blood inside, artificial blood. So the performance of the company, Beyond Meat, it went up like crazy. Share price, down it has tanked. So this is one category. Then in the oat milk category, oat milk, in particular Oatly, that was positioned as a market leader. You go to any good cafe, they would offer coffee, barista version of the Oatly oat milk. But the trouble is, after IPO, the price tanked significantly, 90%. So it looks like the consumer has got preference for Oatly oat milk, and yet, at the same time, the market is not really recognizing that. There's a bit of a disconnect. Any comments?
Well, about Beyond Meat, well, I think it's a good example of how the investor scene is now shifting towards new types of solutions that are maybe more needed for the future of food, and that excites me. The fact that we are correcting how investment is acting. When money was very cheap and confused, it was flowing into the pockets of companies that maybe didn't deserve it because there was no market fit, and in fact, it's not what the not all what the sector wants. So I see that first part, that investment is correcting itself in towards more needed technology, maybe invisible technology throughout the whole value chain of food, in how we are producing and distributing our food, not necessarily into new fancy products in the market. So I am not excited, not looking forward to new CPG in the market. I'm not going to be working on that. But I do think there needs to be a lot of invisible innovation throughout the whole value chain. So I have seen the same shifts in the market as you mentioned, and I'm glad they're happening.
I think we have time for just one more question before coffee, and I think Alex back there has got one.
Thanks. Yeah, a question, a comment just on to continue the discussion. I think on the nutrition side, it's actually, if you look at specific plant-based meat products and really look at the different macronutrients, it's more of a nuanced picture. You have fiber, you have less saturated fats, you have less bad cholesterol and so forth. There's still too much salt in this product, but it's a more nuanced discussion than plant-based, less nutritious than conventional. And just on the point on how is the market developing? I think some of these big brands like Beyond and Oatly, they've gotten a lot of coverage. But if you actually look at market data overall and take a more holistic picture, US has been flatlining on plant-based meat over the last 2 years. Europe is still growing. Actually, Spain is one of the fastest growing plant-based meat markets in Europe. But the big challenge for Beyond and others is essentially they're targeting meat eaters, right? This is not just a niche for vegetarians and vegans. It's about giving people who want to like meat, but maybe want to reduce a bit of the conventional meat that they're eating, an opportunity and an offer that they actually like in terms of taste and flavor. And we have to be realistic with the current plant-based products. Most of them, the value proposition to consumers is it's an inferior product, it doesn't taste as good, and it costs more. That's not a winning value proposition in any industry, in any sector. So we need the efforts that some of you described, John. We need chefs, we need the experts on flavor to actually come in, and we need the new technologies to improve the flavor of these products and to eventually get price down.
Anybody want to comment on that?
As you mentioned, just to the startups and the companies in Spain, what we are seeing is that, yes, there are many small startups working on these types of solutions. If they are to succeed on the long term, we need to do something about it now. They are currently in that death valley that we have been speaking about. So we are at a turning point. It can go forward if we rethink how we support them at this stage, because they are at risk.
And I 100% agree with you, and especially in the case of who is the consumer. If maybe 5 years ago we were developing product for vegans, today it's not. The market is not that. The market is everyone.
Right. The market is everyone, and coffee's ready for everyone outside. We should come back within 20 minutes or so. So, thank you very much
Thank
to
you.
our panel.
Thank you.
That was